Welcome, one and all, to episode 47 of Project Geekology, coming to you live from the snowy peaks of the Triple Horn Mountain Range overlooking the serene towers of the Royal Palace of Aldera. That's right, we're on Alderaan, where nothing bad ever happens. Well, not yet anyway. We're in 9 BBY, approximately 9 years before Alderaan receives its fiery fate at the hands of the Death Star and Tarkin. But today, we're here to talk more happy thoughts, specifically about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm one of your hosts, Dakota, and I'm joined as always with
Anthony.
And yeah, so we're going to be talking all about Obi-Wan Kenobi. We're very excited. It's a series that we've been looking forward to for a long time. And I don't know about you, Anthony. I have mixed opinions about the series as a whole, but there's a lot I liked. But there's some things I didn't like. We're going to get into all that. We're going to dig into it. And but before we do any of that, Anthony, what have you been up to since we talked last?
Well, as Dakota knows, the last episode that we released, the Stranger Things episode, was actually edited by me. Usually, Dakota does the producing side of the show. He does a lot of the editing. I help with a lot of the back-end stuff, but I decided to help. It was definitely eye-opening, and it was a fun experience, and I learned a lot from it, and I learned a lot about the way that I speak from it.
Yeah, it's interesting what we learn when we have to be critical about, editing ourselves, because we get super self-conscious about random things, but you know what? It's part of the process. It's part of the learning process, and it actually probably helps us in our speech patterns later on. The more you do it, the more you edit down stuff that you dislike about my speech or your speech or whatever, or in my case, Jen's speech, or editing footage from films into your stuff. The more you start doing that, the more you realize what you do and don't like to listen to or to hear verbally, and it's just a learning curve, and to be honest, I did go over everything that you edited for the last episode, and it's super solid. I did a little touching up after that, and I really didn't have to do all that much. I just let it play for the most part. So that was awesome. You did a great job.
I appreciate that. I like being able to help out in any way that I can, and I am half of the show just as you are, and I think that's a good idea to share that kind of load. It is a big responsibility. We hope to be able to knock out more episodes for you guys. So editing was a great time, and I learned a lot from it. Other than that, I've been playing video games. I've been playing the Overwatch 2 beta, which actually drops on June 26th or June 28th, whatever day that week.
So it's been about a week.
Tuesday. Whatever that Tuesday was.
So it was last Tuesday?
Yes. So I've been playing that for a little bit. Being able to check out the new hero. They came out with one called Junker Queen, she's from, So characters, they have their own little groups and places that they're from. Junkertown is Roadhog, Junkrat, Wrecking Ball, and Junker Queen leads that area.
Interesting. Okay, so I don't want to get too much on a Overwatch tangent, because we do have a full episode on Overwatch, but I want to ask, what is the big difference between Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2? Is this a sizable addition to the series, or is it just... Because, every now and then Overwatch would create just a patch, and there would be new maps, there would be new characters. What is the big difference between this version of Overwatch?
So I would say that Overwatch 2, the changes aren't big enough for me to call it a second game. I would say it's more of an expansion, quote unquote. Okay. But I would say that the sizable differences are they've knocked out one tank from each team, so there's less people. There's 2 less people on the field now. It's 5v5, and they've changed some of the game modes. They got rid of 2 capture point maps in favor of this one called Push. And it's literally what it is. There's a robot that's pushing this thing back and forth, and you kind of have to take control and push it to the goal. And
that's cool.
Overwatch 2, the PvP stuff is actually going to be free to play. So they're adding battle passes and stuff to it. So they're giving it kind of a free to play treatment, but when the actual campaign stuff comes out, I'm seeing that that's going to be an actual cost. I don't think that it should be any more than $40, but I wouldn't put it past them for charging $60.
Yeah, because to them, it's not an expansion, They're treating it like a normal game.
Right, which is kind of weird for Blizzard,
Yeah, but...
Which I believe is the Activision side of Blizzard that's doing that. So.
Right now, yeah. So, you said that there was a campaign mode?
Yes, that's not coming out yet. That, I think, is coming out sometime next year.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, that's a little disappointing. I feel like I wouldn't be paying for the full game, if I bought it immediately.
Yeah, well, that's why it's going to be free to play. The PvP stuff's going to be free to play. You're not going to be paying until the actual campaign stuff comes out, which, like I said, shouldn't be costing that much, because unless it's like super like crazy over the top, which I'm not really expecting it to be. I'm expecting it to be fun and a cool addition to the lore, but I'm not expecting it to be something worth $60.
What's great about Overwatch, and I'm sure we talked about this ad nauseum in our Overwatch episode, but the lore is super deep.
Yeah.
And it's super enthralling. I don't know if the lore is deep, but everything in the lore is fascinating. Every character has their story, and that's something that I really appreciate. And when there were certain like campaign missions within Overwatch, like there was that Uprising event where they dived into a period of the Overwatch history. That was awesome. I wanted more of that. That was like, I want to know more about the story, and I think that's like the biggest part for me with Overwatch is I need to know that story. So actually knowing that there's going to be a campaign is what's enticing me and probably going to get me into Overwatch 2 personally. But that's exciting. You've been playing anything else, or?
I've been playing that, and I've actually taken a dive back into World of Warcraft. I've been playing a lot more of the Burning Crusade Classic. I know that your time is limited, but I think it would be cool for you to jump back in it, especially because I think you and I are going to cover World of Warcraft. But I don't think we should cover it as a whole. I think we should probably cover it up until a certain point. And that point would be where you and I were playing more actively.
Okay, yeah, I would love to cover World of Warcraft at some point. There was a large portion of our youth where we were just stuck in that game.
Right.
It was a good time. There's a lot of wasted days in World of Warcraft, but I have very good memories.
And then before that, you and I we had our own little side shop in RuneScape.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, the good old days.
We had our little side hustle in RuneScape.
Getting all the gold.
I don't even remember. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was fun. So yeah, I did a lot of gaming, and I do have an upcoming episode that I would like to do, and I would like to at some point cover The Matrix.
The movie?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so down. It's one of my favorite movies. Let's do it. Why are we covering Obi-Wan Kenobi? Let's jump into The Matrix right now. Right here. Nah, I'm kidding. Let's do it. Yeah, I'm totally down.
So aside from playing video games and watching some stuff here and there hasn't been much going on. I do have a convention coming up this weekend as of recording. It's definitely going to have passed by the time this episode is released. But the next episode that comes out, we are going to be discussing a bit about that convention. Which I'm excited about. Yes. It's going to be a good time. We're going to have a little bit of a segment on there because I am going as press. And yeah, it's going to be a great
press time. For Project Geekology. That's huge. It's our first official press thing for this particular outlet. So that's awesome.
And we couldn't have done it without the listeners.
Yes, you listeners. Thank you so much. Thank
you so much for helping us make it. So yeah, there's nothing going on aside from that. How about you, Dakota? I feel like I've been talking so much. So yeah, tell us what's been going on with you.
You know what? It's usually you that forgets what you did in the past week or so. Not
right.
Me. So I'm trying to remember what I did. I know I've listened to a lot of audiobooks recently. Actually, I got a lot to talk about. All right, so this past weekend, this past weekend I went on like a crazy reading spree because I've been so busy like working on different projects, whether it's Project Ecology or something else. Like on Geekritique, I have like 2 new videos up on Geekritique that are doing pretty well, so I'm happy about that. But I haven't had time to read my weekly comics that I get, and I try to go every Wednesday. It's new comic book day at my comic book shop. I grab what's new that interests me. On slow weeks there's like 3 to 5 issues. On heavy weeks there's like 7 to 9. But in the past like month and change, I just haven't had time to like really devote time to sitting down and like catching up on everything. So I had a stack of like 35 comics that I had to get through.
Oh my gosh.
This past weekend I told Jen Saturday, she woke up and I'm like sitting on the couch like, hey, I'm gonna be reading today, you can join me if you'd like. It was a formal invitation. Anyway, I blitzed through like 21 comics out of that 35 stack that I had, and man, I had a good time. So many adventures, so many. It's so fun, like learning about what your favorite heroes are up to currently and stuff. So that's been pretty cool. So I got a lot of reading done there. But what I want to talk about specifically is a new book. A new Star Wars novel by Adam Christopher called Shadow of the Sith. It came out last week. I'm about halfway through, and dude, it is essential Star Wars. A lot of the canon novels, they talk about side characters. They talk about, characters who... I don't know. There's a lot of, like, canon novels that just kind of, like, create new characters or go to side characters, but there's not a lot in the current canon that deal with actual, like, Jedi stuff, So this is actually, I think, the first novel that's post Return of the Jedi that deals exclusively with, like, Luke Skywalker and what he's been doing after the original trilogy. So it takes place in like 20 years after that, and it's so good. It bridges the gap between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. It answers questions about, like, Rey's parentage. It answers questions about, like, Exegol and, like, Palpatine's real plan and, like, how far back that was, like, being worked on and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it gets really heavy, and, like, Luke actually learns a lot about, like, what happens in this book, and Lando's also in it, so it's a Luke and Lando adventure.
Oh, nice.
With a little bit of Rey's family mixed in, so it's a solid read. I'm only halfway through it. It's currently in my top 3 canon Star Wars novels ever, and I've read, like, I don't know, 40 or 50 of them at this point. So it's really good. I highly recommend it. Eventually, I'd like to do one of this book, kind of like how we did with Light of the Jedi, like a year ago or so.
Do you think that it fixes some problems that the sequel trilogy has?
I think that's the ultimate goal of it. There's certain plot holes, there's certain, like, contrivances within the sequel trilogy that have to be overlooked, but now they don't have to be overlooked because they can be addressed directly. There's a lot of little details in this that bridge that gap really well. And speaking about bridging gaps, that's a good segue into our topic for today, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
It's Obi-Wan Kenobi is such a perfect bridge between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. And I'm not saying it's a perfect show, but there's a lot in it that is, like, essential to understanding the character of Obi-Wan and Leia and all this. So, yeah, I would say, it's kind of essential Star Wars at this point. So, yeah, going from Shadow of the Sith to Obi-Wan Kenobi, both are bridges per se, but they both open up new doors and everything. So I'm excited about that.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Yes, I agree. While Obi-Wan is not a perfect show, I do believe that it does a lot to bridge the prequels and the original trilogy. And there is a lot to like about it. I know that there's a lot of complaints about the show, but I'm going to be honest, I had fun with it. Overall, I loved it. I liked it more than... I feel like the flaws didn't take me out of the show as much as it did some other people.
All right, so let's dive into it then. Overall, like, going into it, where would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
So it's a little hard because I enjoy Ewan as Obi-Wan. I think that he honors what Alec Guinness did, and he fits into the shoes of that role just so well. Back in Revenge of the Sith, in this show, it seemed like he didn't really miss a beat, and you could see that the character grew, and he did really well with, he hadn't been in that character for what?
20 years.
Exactly.
Almost. 15, 20 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So I would actually agree. The performance that Ewan provided was incredible. The fact that he was able to distill his own version of Obi-Wan from the prequels and mix it with Alec Guinness's final form of Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original trilogy, I think he did a phenomenal job. Because it isn't exactly the same character as it was in the prequel trilogy. There's something broken with that character. There's something lost from the prequel trilogy Obi-Wan Kenobi. And now we're starting to meet Ben. We're starting to meet Ewan McGregor's Ben. And I think that that's a really fascinating, just an acting role in general, because not only are we seeing a character go back to a character from 15, 20 years ago, we're seeing an actor also mix that with the original performance of the character, like you said, with Alec Guinness. So I think he does a really good job.
I agree.
I think none of the problems that I have with the entire show, nothing can be leveled at that performance or the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think they nailed pretty much everything with that character. You know, I think that there was a level of respect given to both the actor and the character, and a really well-defined limitation of what they can and can't do, so that it doesn't like overstep what happens in the original trilogy. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I agree.
So, that being said, you still haven't given me a 1 out of 10.
Oh, right. We did that whole explanation. Like I said, it's hard, and I don't want to be biased. So I would say that my unbiased score would be like a 7.5. And my biased score would probably be like an 8.5, 8.75.
Okay, hey, that's solid. And on my second, well, some of the episodes I've watched 3 times now, but I just today spent a good portion of my day watching the entire thing again. So a lot of it was my second viewing. And I will say that for a second viewing, there were some episodes that felt weaker, but there were some episodes that felt stronger. So it's hard for me to say fully at this point, but I would agree at least with the 7.5 score, because when it's high, it's really good, but when it's low, it loses me a little bit. So I would range from like 6 to 7.5. That's 7.58 would be like my biased viewpoint. That's the Star Wars nerd in me. The Geekritique in me is leaning towards, you know, like a 6, if I'm being honest with myself. But I don't think it's as bad as the Book of Boba Fett. I think the Book of Boba Fett had really low lows. That show, probably in retrospect, I would rate around the 5 to 6 range, you know. But anyway,
right. Well, yeah, in the episode that we had on it, its biggest problem was identity, and I don't think that Obi-Wan really suffered from that, because we knew what the show was about, and the show stuck to that.
Yeah. So, as we discuss Obi-Wan, I think we'll go somewhat chronologically. We might jump around a little bit as we do, you know, in conversation. But I think we're going to stick to a spoiler-heavy discussion, just because, you know, we can talk about the greater things, but ultimately we're going to want to talk about the smaller things in detail. So I think, are you okay with that, Anthony? We're just going to jump into spoiler territory from here?
Right. I think that for the most part, we've talked about the gist of the show. And I think that this show is pretty big. I would say, just for a short non-spoiler thing. Yeah, so Obi-Wan is 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. And it pretty much shows him in the state that he's in, which is a broken state, and he learns of pretty much he kind of regains his strength, and we see that transition from Revenge of the Sith to a bit more of Ben Kenobi of A New Hope.
Right, yeah, and one thing you mentioned was that he kind of regains his strength, or he relearns what he knew, and that's a byproduct of him not using his Force abilities for good reason, for at least, you know, one would assume the time that he first brought Luke to Owen and Beru Lars, you know?
Yeah.
You would expect that that's when he cut himself off from the Force, pretty much, and, you know, stayed in hiding. Not only to protect himself, but also to protect the boy that he was overlooking. So, with that, we start the story with Obi-Wan, or rather Ben, not using his Force abilities at all. He doesn't currently have a lightsaber. He's not Obi-Wan Kenobi anymore. He's Ben. You know, he's changed his personality into a crazy old hermit who lives in a cave.
Yeah, he's a caveman.
He is a caveman. I do like that he has, like, you know, his little job that, like, keeps him afloat. You know, he's, like, carving out meat from, I don't know, a crate dragon maybe. I don't know what that thing is, but it's a big carcass.
Right. He has like a 9 to 5 that he works, and he gets his money, and he takes a little bit of meat to
his EOP.
Yeah.
Which I find his relationship with his pet steed quite endearing. But I think Obi-Wan's just a kind person in general. So no matter what or like who he's dealing with, he's always going to be kind. But so going into the first episode, like I said, he's not Obi-Wan Kenobi anymore. He's not the Obi-Wan you know. And part of the story has already happened. Part of the story, or you're kind of like forced to understand that. It's not going to tell you why he's not Obi-Wan Kenobi anymore. Obviously, you know that the Inquisitors are out to get him. You know, people who are literal Jedi hunters who are trying to finish the purge that started 10 years ago. But I like... a lot of people had an issue with the fact that there were, like, you know, every couple months, Star Wars, whether it's in, like, the comics or the games or now the shows, they're revealing that more and more Jedi have survived the Purge. But to me, it only makes sense, you know? In the prequels, we learned that there's about 10,000 Jedi, you know, spread across the galaxy. It's not likely that all 10,000 or, like, 99% of them were killed immediately. You know?
Right. I'm pretty sure that there were some that were out and about. They didn't have clone units. I don't believe that all of them have clone units.
No, it was only the generals, really.
And you see, and you actually learn a lot more, especially when you get to Light of the Republic, that they were kind of all over the place. There's planets that aren't talked about in the prequels or even these shows that there could be Jedi at, outposts that there's no clones at because there's not much going on over there.
And this show actually does a really good job of introducing us to the underbelly of, you know, Jedi on the run, you know, as a whole. And we're going to talk about that when we get to episode 3. So yeah, we're going to talk more about like the Jedi that we don't see and some Jedi that we do see. But let's jump back a little bit. So we jump away from Tatooine, you know, after we see Obi-Wan overlooking Luke and Owen and all that. And we jump away and we find that there's that lovely, like, little scene with a young Leia, you know, tricking her parents to run off into the forest. And I love that actress, the little actress that they chose for a young Leia.
I know, I thought she did really good.
And I'm rewatching it today and I'm like, I kept looking over to Jen. I'm like, yo, she did really good, you know? Like, there's a scene in episode 4 in Fortress Inquisitorius where she's being interrogated, and it's super solid acting, you know? Like, she's playing both sides. She's playing for her character, she's playing against Reva, and she's trying to trick her, and in so doing, she's tricking the camera a little bit. And she's actually a really decent actress for such a young, you know, for such a young girl.
Yeah, I think she did a great job in playing a young Leia.
And she feels natural.
She does.
It feels like a natural...
Right. I was like, yo, this is Leia.
This is little Carrie Fisher. It's so good. So let's jump ahead a little bit. She gets kidnapped by Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and...
Dude, I died. I was like, I said, no way.
Yeah, she gets kidnapped by Flea. That's okay. Here's like my first kind of gripe. There's a couple times in the show where Leia is on the run, and this is nothing against the actress. She's a very small person, but she's not very fast. The fact that she's able to run away for so long and get away from these individuals who are trying to chase her is insane. Like,
right, and the way that she's like tricking them and jumping over these things and they're getting tricked, I'm like,
you know what that scene needed is more like cuts to like people like tripping or, you know, just like leaves like in the way of the camera or something so that it's like more believable. But there's a lot of like, you know, just still shots of like her running and then like people just like randomly falling into like just running into branches that are right there, you know,
tripping over like branches and slipping. Yeah, no, it was funny. I was like, you had enough time to avoid that. Like, how did you not see that?
There's a level of I don't know what it is in that scene, but it happens a couple times throughout the season. Like jumping ahead to the second episode when she's running away from Obi-Wan in Dayu, there's absolutely zero chance she would get away from him and go that far where she's like jumping across buildings, because she was literally like within arm's reach, and then the next scene like Obi-Wan's nowhere to be seen and she's climbing a ladder up to the rooftops and jumping over roofs, and it's just like, how did she do this? How can she, she can't keep getting away with this. So there's a certain level of like spatial awareness within the camera. I think it's a directing issue, and I think this is part of the reason I was taken out a couple times throughout the show. So I'm just gonna say this now so that I don't like harp on this for the entire thing. I gotta get it out of my system. There's certain things that are like necessary for every story, and the awareness of space, you know, the space around you, the space within the camera lens, everything within, you know, like everything that involves spatial awareness, it needs to be present and like showcased on screen, or else we're not going to believe it. And that's the problem that I see with Obi-Wan Kenobi. It happens a lot where there's like certain scenes where, you know, a character is being chased and then a lot of time passes and then the person chasing them doesn't catch up, or it's weird, you know, and it's just like most of this would be cut out of a movie. And that's ultimately what Obi-Wan Kenobi is. It's a long movie, you know, that's like spread across 6 parts.
Yes. It's almost like, it's like one long serial.
Which isn't always a bad thing.
Right. It's one long storyline. It's not how The Mandalorian is presented, you know?
Right. Mandalorian, each episode is episodic. You know, each episode is a story in and of itself.
Except for like the 2-parters that they would have, or the 3-parters.
Right, yeah. What's interesting is that, like, I've never felt this issue specifically with a Star Wars project before. Whether it's with any of the shows like Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett, you know, there are some issues with Book of Boba Fett, like, I'm not even going to get into that. But I never feel like that there's like a missing cognizance of like spatial awareness. And that is my biggest issue with the show, because it takes me out, you know, every time I see it, every time that there's like some jump in logic that I'm supposed to like understand, it gets to me, you know, like there's a scene where there's a barricade in episode 3 that they have to get around. And, you know, the camera is literally facing like both corners of this barricade on that planet Mapuzo. That it's like an Imperial barricade that they can't get across via vehicle. But honestly, they could just go around it. We see the edges of it. They could just walk around it. They don't have to shoot it to get through. Again, in episode 3, there's the fight with Vader and Obi-Wan at, you know, within the like the salt mines or whatever it is over there. And you know, there's a lot of like weird spatial awareness things. Like, you know, he'll go behind a pillar of sand and then like lose Darth Vader. He loses Darth Vader for, you know, 5 minutes or so as he's like walking around, not sure where to go next. And then like later when Vader like lights that place up conveniently, Obi-Wan gets away on the other side of that fire thing. But like Vader could just look, Vader's armor is meant to like withstand fire anyway, so he could just walk through it and not be harmed. He could go around the fire. There was absolutely zero reason for Obi-Wan to get away in Mapuzo in that episode, and it's all to do with like spatial awareness. It's like people walk out of the frame and we're just meant to believe that they're not there anymore, you know? It's like, have you ever played peekaboo with like a baby? For whatever reason, when you cover your face, they lose the awareness that you're currently in front of them. And it's kind of like that with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, the babies don't have the cognizance to realize that there's something blocking the other person. But when you remove your hand and go peekaboo, the kid freaks out because, oh my god, there's a person right there. You know, it's kind of, it feels like that in a way with Obi-Wan Kenobi, in the sense that, like, as soon as a character exits camera frame, we're suddenly meant to believe that the person that's still in the camera frame no longer knows where the character is. And it just kept happening. And I think that's ultimately an issue with the cinematographer or the director. You know, whoever's in charge of like what's in the frame. I think that's my biggest gripe with Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know? Other than that, I think that the story is solid. It's not like superb, but it's solid enough that I can enjoy every single episode, you know?
Do you think that with the fire moment that he allowed Obi-Wan to get away because he had like a moment, he had a momentary confliction?
You know, it's a possibility, but they never touch on it. They never even like hint that that's a possibility. So it's impossible for us to say. You know, that's an easy way for us to like get around that issue. It's a headcanon thing, you know? Like it's something that like I believe that he would have let Obi-Wan go in this instance. But no, we don't actually see that. We just see him getting away. And then the next episode he's all angry because he has no idea where Obi-Wan is. So anyway, that's my little tangent. So let's go back to where we're talking about. We have Leia has been kidnapped by Flea and friends. Leia's been kidnapped by the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the behest of Reva.
Yeah.
What did you think of Reva? Because I know a lot of people either didn't care for her or hated her.
I didn't hate her. So I liked Reva. I think that the actress I don't think there's anything wrong with the actress. I don't know if it's the writing for her, but they kind of made her a little
one-dimensional.
Yeah, they didn't give her enough. I feel like they didn't give her enough depth. They gave her a little bit, and I guess
near the end. Near the end they gave her
right. And for the longest time I'm like, why is she so angry at Obi-Wan? Like, why is she so dead set on capturing him? Really, the only one that should have any beef with him is Vader.
Right, yeah. And, you know, throughout the show, we see that she's, like, very angry. She's very angsty. She has beef with everyone. She has beef with Vader. She has beef with Obi-Wan. She has beef with the Grand Inquisitor and the other Inquisitors. And every planet she goes on, she's starting fights in the effort to get Obi-Wan Kenobi. And, yeah, so that's like, the whole driving motivation and force behind her. And it's not until very late in the show where we're given any real character depth as like to explain what her end game is, you know?
Right. And I guess her beef with Obi-Wan is the fact that Vader is his apprentice. You know, it was his apprentice, and at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you failed to take him out when you should have. Look what he did to my fellow younglings. He just struck him down. Yeah,
so Reva, we end up getting flashbacks later on that she was one of the younglings that Vader at the time struck down. And she clearly knew who Anakin Skywalker was at the time because she saw Anakin's face. She and obviously, you know, if you know Anakin, you know Obi-Wan at that time. Right. You know? They were pretty inseparable for the most part. So it was understandable for her to make the connection, as we see in episode 2, that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. And the reason that Vader is so intent on capturing Obi-Wan Kenobi is because that was his master previously. So she made the connection, and her ultimate goal was to get as close as possible to Darth Vader so that she can take her revenge, ultimately. So her goal was to supersede and, you know, take over control of the Grand Inquisitor position so that she could be Vader's right-hand man and take him down when he least expected it.
Right.
And basically the moral of the story is be careful what you wish for.
I know, seriously. What did you think about the flashbacks to Order 66? I actually thought that those were well done. I thought it was really cool, them going back and kind of just that opening scene that they did to start off the show.
Yeah, no, there's a lot within the first episode alone that we haven't like even touched on, but when it comes to that opening scene of them in Coruscant in the Jedi Temple, it was cool. You know, it's cool, it's tragic, and it's terrible. You don't want to see Jedi fall.
Right.
Jedi are the good guy. Jedi are the people who have sworn to protecting the galaxy. And here they are just being massacred. And it's the first scene in the show, and obviously it's terrible. And what is extra sad about it is the fact that you see younglings, kids, being targeted, and their mentors or their teachers, they have to, you know, stand up in between the aggressors and the students. And it's a terrible thing to visualize, and it's even more terrible because, you know, we actually see that in our day-to-day lives nowadays, you know, with unfortunate school shootings and all that. So it takes on new meaning nowadays when that's unfortunately a more common issue that we deal with in our country of origin. So it's hard to watch, but it's also like amazing that they're able to capture it in such a way, and you need it because that's part of the Star Wars story. You know, you need to see the fall of the Jedi, and it's important to the origin of this character Reva. You need to understand where she came from to understand how she got where she is.
Right. And we never really saw what happened in the inside. Like, we knew that it fell, we knew that it was taken over, but we never really got to see the conflict within the inside of it, and we got a bit more of that in this show.
It glossed over a lot in Revenge of the Sith. I mean, obviously, it didn't gloss over everything, but there was a lot of stuff that was just hinted at or highlighted in Obi-Wan Kenobi that was interesting enough for us to, really get a taste of like her side of the story from her perspective. And we get like incremental flashbacks of Anakin Skywalker with some clone troopers behind him, taking out younglings, and there's like a first person perspective of him like stabbing through Reva but not exactly killing her.
Right.
So she comes up with this crazy plan. I don't know how it worked, but she comes up with a crazy plan that that works. Let's kidnap the Princess of Alderaan, because I read a story about how Obi-Wan Kenobi and Bail Organa were cool 10 years ago. And I think that if we steal the princess, he will come to Bail Organa's aid. It's a crazy story because, Bail Organa is the leader of the planet. He has so many forces at his beck and call. He has so many friends within the Senate, within the Empire, within everything that he can just call upon to help get his kids back. Or his kid back. But somehow, Obi-Wan takes the bait. Bail asks for him specifically, and that's how we start our journey with Obi-Wan, taking up his duties as Obi-Wan again.
Reva's like, it's a crazy notion, but it's crazy enough that it just might work.
That's pretty much what it is, like, it's so crazy, it might just work. It's a 1 in a billion chance, but I'm gonna take it. Hey, her gamble paid off. They got Leia, they got Obi-Wan. They take Leia to Daiyu for the second episode. And what did you think of Daiyu? That was a new planet for us.
I thought it was cool. It was almost like a space age Hong Kong.
Yeah, it had like Hong Kong feel, some Blade Runner vibes to it, some Tokyo as well. Yeah, so I like that too. It had episode 2 vibes, for sure.
Right, and then our boy... his daughter was in it too.
Yeah, that was an interesting interaction. So Ewan McGregor's daughter shows up briefly to sell him spice and basically gives him a free sample, which he uses to great effect later on, as he takes that red hot chili spice and, demolishes the red hot chili peppers.
You really gonna like play that up?
I gotta do it while I can. I mean, Flea's only in 2 episodes, so.
Oh my gosh. Done. That red hot chili spice. Done.
But it was cool seeing his daughter show up.
Yeah, it was.
She even says a line. She says a line where it's like, I was somebody's daughter once too. Knowing that it's his kid, it's like kind of a weird scene, but anyway, it's fun for Star Wars. In his attempt to, find the prison cell where Leia is being held captive, he stumbles upon a guy who's playing the role of a Jedi. He's like basically a swindler pretending to be a Jedi. His name's Haja. And yeah, I have like mixed feelings about him. Personally, like, I think like sometimes his character works really well in the series, and sometimes it's like juxtaposed to the story that they're trying to tell.
I feel like that actor always plays that type of character.
Yes. Kumail Nanjiani. Yeah, he played it in Eternals too.
Yeah,
he did a very similar character.
He did. He really did.
But
yeah, he was a Bollywood star in that. That was
exactly yes.
Yeah. So. No, it was funny. The little like tricks that he would pull that Obi-Wan was not amused with.
Not at all. He was like breaking his magnets, breaking his remote controls. Interestingly, and this is really cool. So the kid that he sends off in, like, when we first meet Haja, he's with a mother and a child. In the credits, the kid is named Corran. Corran. And for fans of like the post Return of the Jedi Legends novels, like the New Jedi Order and stuff, Corran Horn was one of the primary Jedi at the time. So that was like a nod that this character from Legends is alive at this time, and he's a child during the Obi-Wan era. So a little Legends nod for those who are interested. But I personally got a huge kick out of that, because I remember when I was a kid, the first book I had read was the first New Jedi Order book, and I was telling my parents, yeah, there's a guy named Corran Horn, and all they kept hearing was Corn Horn. So it's just a little bit of like just a good memory from me experiencing Star Wars novels when I was a kid. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Which is, I remember reading a bit of that series also. I think that they got the vibe of the main enemy of that series and brought it over to the Nihil a little bit in Light of the Jedi.
Yeah, so the Yuzon Vong, which were the primary baddies of the New Jedi Order series, maybe like are spiritual successors to the Nihil, you know? Like, they're not the same by any stretch of the imagination, but they feel like that thread of them is as strong as the Yuzon Vong, you know? So, yeah, I could see that.
Right. So, yeah, moral of this rabbit trail, there's a legend, this rabbit hole, that there's a character from Legends that was named in this episode.
Yes. That's it. I mean, it's cool, though.
Yeah.
It's cool that they brought him into it, and there's a possibility of that character now being in Luke's New Jedi Order, you know, that is very quickly and summarily destroyed by his nephew. So, let's jump back. So, Obi-Wan finally captures Leia from her captors by using the Red Hot Chili Spice on the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anyway, he finds the room where she's being held, and I love the line where she's just like, "Where's the army?" You know, she's just expecting her father to use the full force of his power to, you know, reclaim her, and they just send one old guy.
It's like, who the heck's this guy?
And then they go on the run, and I love the little interactions between Leia and Ben. I think that's one of the things they really, really nailed down. Because going into the original trilogy, Episode 4, A New Hope, we know that Leia knows who Obi-Wan is, but it's not clear whether she had any like actual experience or like personal time with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So it was always weird when she called her child Ben, you know? Like, that seems like something that Luke would call a kid, not Leia. True. But when in Obi-Wan Kenobi, they really bring those two characters together for a large portion of the show, and they become very close, and I really appreciate that. And actually, my brother Noah, he brought up, there's a scene in A New Hope when Luke breaks into her prison cell, and he goes, "I'm here with Ben Kenobi," and then she goes, "Ben Kenobi? Well, where is he?" or something like that. And that one scene is perfect. It's a perfect run-up from what happens in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they nailed it perfectly. And
that was probably
it's
unintentional.
really cool.
Like, I mean,
exactly.
I mean, shoot, let's be real. George Lucas thought that was the only Star Wars he was going to be making. So,
yeah, no, Lucas.
I mean, because it literally was just called Star Wars. There's no New Hope.
Right, exactly. Back in '77, it was just Star Wars, and that was cool. You know, it was a great movie. You know, it was one of the best movies of all time. So that's cool. Anyway, but yeah, so using that, just the inflection of the way that she says Ben Kenobi, they were able to tell this whole story about how she was saved by Ben Kenobi when she was 10 years old. And that was so cool to me. The fact that they were able to tie those two things in together, and the show does so much more than just tie that together. They also tie in, I mean, we'll get into more of that later, but yeah, they tie in a lot of like little loose ends as to like why Alec Guinness's version of Obi-Wan says certain things as opposed to other things, like calling Darth Vader Darth instead of Anakin or Darth Vader, you know, like little things like that just make a lot more sense now, having seen the thing.
True.
So Reva finally catches up to Obi-Wan and Leia on the run, and she sets out a bounty for the two of them, mostly for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's when Leia realizes that she needs to run away from this guy. She thinks that he's the reason she's been caught, which is true. And but she foolishly runs away, and he needs to catch her to save her life.
Right, she realizes that she's bait to get this man out in the open.
One thing I really like about young Leia is like she's a little genius prodigy.
Right, she's sharp, which makes sense for Leia, because Leia, she is a smart character, and it would be natural for her to be pretty sharp as a young kid, you know. And
there's several times in the series where Obi-Wan is taken aback by like how smart she is. Like in episode 2, he goes, "How old are you?" And she goes, 10. And he goes, "You don't act like you're 10." Or like, "You don't seem like you're 10." She goes, "Thank you."
But yeah, it's just so crazy though. Just the rage that Reva has against Obi-Wan, man. It's just she wants this guy bad.
And like jumping on, I hate going back to like the spatial awareness, but there's the whole scene where like Obi-Wan is like facing off against a couple bounty hunters on the roof, and we see like interspersed with those action scenes, you know, Reva like jumping and doing parkour on the rooftops trying to catch up with Obi-Wan, and then nothing comes of it, you know, like it's like 5 minutes later and she's just like, "Lost him, but I got this other guy who thinks he's a Jedi named Haja," you know, and she gets the information out of him. But it's like, why show her running across the rooftops if she isn't actually going to catch anything? It's weird stuff like that, just kind of like annoy me, to put it lightly. But anyway, so she ends up catching up with the transport that Obi-Wan and Leia are sent on from Haja. She catches up to him, and so does the Grand Inquisitor, who's like had enough of Reva because she's going above and beyond her station. She's calling Vader. She's like setting off like a bounty hunt against this person, like planet wide, and it's just crazy what she's doing. And eventually, you know, the Grand Inquisitor is like, "I've had enough of you," and she just stabs him.
I know, right? Reva's just like, "Okay, you're my way." Because, I mean, she has this clear goal in mind, and the Grand Inquisitors, which is actually kind of funny when you think about the Inquisitors, where the Grand Inquisitors essentially, like, you need to relax. Like, take a chill pill.
Yeah. So it's a group of, like, really angry people, and she makes them look, like, soft in comparison.
Right, they're all literally like, you need to relax.
Yeah, you need to chill. You need to take some Red Hot Chili Spice. What was I gonna say? So yeah, she ends up stabbing through the Grand Inquisitor, and we knew that it wasn't gonna be. We knew he wasn't dead because he's in Rebels later on,
right?
Down the timeline. So it's like, all right, well, we'll see how that fares for you, Reva.
The lightsaber to the gut doesn't kill anybody anymore.
Now, what do you think about the scene where she like mentions, you know, "We're gonna take you to see him, to see Darth Vader," and then you see the look on Obi-Wan's face where he's just like, "What?" And
well, when she says Anakin, she actually says his name.
Yeah, and then she says Anakin, but she's like, "Oh, you didn't know Anakin's alive."
Right.
Obi-Wan did know that he changed to Darth Vader at that point because he saw the he saw a hologram of him like killing younglings and everything. But what do you think about that scene? Because some people didn't like it. Some people didn't like the fact that she knew who Anakin Skywalker was, and I wonder what you think.
Well, we knew that she had, I mean, obviously, I don't know, I guess because maybe because of her interaction with Anakin before he became the Darth Vader that we know, that's probably why she actually knew him. But what like really got me was the fact that Obi-Wan, 10 years down the line, does not know that Anakin is still around. That Anakin is still alive. That put him into a state of PTSD, really. Like, he was freaking out.
Yeah, you saw him, like, hyperventilating on the passenger craft later on that episode. And what's interesting is it actually makes sense for the character not to know that Darth Vader is, you know, still alive. That Anakin isn't alive. Because it's not like he's actively looking for news around the galaxy. You know, he's literally a hermit in a cave, occasionally trying to reach out to his old master Qui-Gon through the Force. That's it. That's the most news that he probably gets, besides like going into town and, you know, work. So he probably doesn't get a lot of like news about the wider galaxy around him, especially not when it comes to like Jedi hunting, which is primarily what Vader was in charge of at that time, because he trained the Inquisitors. So he tried to stay away from any Jedi news, and in so doing, he didn't know that Vader was still alive.
Yeah. And then there's also the fact that it does seem that he had been trying to connect with Luke to train him, which would be interesting considering the fact that Obi-Wan had disconnected himself from the Force.
Right. I'm sure he remembered all of the, you know, the ways to train someone.
Right.
So that clearly was, that's probably something that he wouldn't lose. But the actual like relation to the Force, clearly he had gotten weak, you know, as Vader mentioned in some of the fights. Going into episode 3, we have Obi-Wan is on the run. He's in his passenger transport. They send him to Mapuzo, and they're looking for someone who's supposed to meet them there, but there's nobody there. And that's where we meet my favorite character, my favorite new character, Freck. Yo, everyone hates Freck because he's like this Imperial like suck-up character. But I thought that Freck was super fun, you know? Like, he's just a citizen trying to do his best in the galaxy. He's trying to do right by the government. And he's got friends on his, like, little route that he goes on. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Freck is the mole-looking guy.
I think that this was that moment where I had really gotten that the World War II Nazi influence from, you know, the Empire. You know, just like kind of the symbol and just the way that they had to be, like kind of sneak around them. And, you know, so I really had gotten that like vibe in that moment, especially. And I think you had mentioned kind of like how it was in some of the episodes that you had mentioned, the just like how the Empire is in this series.
Yeah, so I actually like the point you bring out about the symbolism and like the symbol of the Empire being, it was actually scary for Obi-Wan. They're trying their best to run away from the Empire. Leia runs up to this guy in a transport vehicle. His name's Freck. He's a mole dude. Anyway, he seems really nice and friendly, but as soon as they go around back, they see his loyalties plain and clear. Yeah. You know, he has an Empire flag right on the entrance to his transport. And it becomes terrifying to the audience because you understand that this isn't going to end well. Something about this scenario isn't going to work out. And it's a whole... I actually really like that scene. That whole scene where they're in that transport, and then the stormtroopers come up and they're like grilling him about like the specifics of like, what are you doing on this planet? You're with... you're supposed to be... I think he slips up and says Leia instead of Luna or Luma, which was...
Oh, yeah. Which was the name that he had given Leia. They're trying to pretty much keep themselves on the down low because there had been that bounty put out.
Yeah, so I like the comparison you just made about World War II because it did definitely have those feel.
Especially
that feel of...
Especially the environment of that planet. It kind of gave you that... It was almost not exactly like Germany, but there was like those fields and they're kind of on a dirt path, and then that whole vehicle that they were on kind of reminded me of those vehicles, those transport vehicles that they would use, especially the military, like, you know, those...
Yeah, actually that's a really good comparison, like the transport barges that they would use for soldiers
and supplies with the like canopies over the top usually.
Yeah, this didn't have the canopy,
right.
But it did have that feel and that vibe, and yeah, the tensions were there. It was similar tensions to that episode in Mandalorian where Bill Burr's character is talking to his previous officer.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? That was good.
That was really, really good. Yeah, it got super tense. And that moment right there, because you know that they were trying to stand it down low, and even even Din Djarin in the episode's just like, don't do it. You know, I mean, you knew Obi-Wan wasn't going to do anything stupid, but you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to get found out.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a different scenario because you don't have... Neither Obi-Wan nor Leia are like hotheads. Like, I forget Bill Burr's character's name at this moment, but also like Din Djarin has a temper on him, you know? Like, he's kind of a loose cannon, but Bill Burr's character definitely was a loose cannon.
Looser cannon.
You know something. Oh, yeah. So that was definitely there was a lot more at stake there, but with this, it's a lot smaller scale. It's just a couple stormtroopers. It's one entrance point into or like barricade point that they have to get through. It's a smaller deal ultimately.
Right.
But just the specifics of it and the fear of like what's at stake, it makes it just as important, in the moment. I love that part. And then we actually meet at the barricade Tala, who becomes pivotal, and that's actually who they were supposed to meet when they got to Maputo.
Right. I'm actually really happy that they were able to get through that barricade, because man, that thing was hard to get past.
Yeah, all they had to do is shoot it,
or walk around it.
You know what? That's actually like or walk around it. Like, why couldn't they just walk around it? Like, the camera's literally pointed at like the corner where there's like a 3-foot gap where you could just walk around it.
I've seen memes about it, honestly.
Yeah, but one of my biggest gripes with Star Wars in general is like, if you can't enter a room, just destroy the data pad that's right next to the door. Like, and it automatically opens.
It's like, what are codes for when you could just destroy it?
Right, because there's a whole job in Star Wars called Slicer, which is that's their whole purpose. It's to like open and like decode stuff. But like, if you just have a blaster, you can get into anywhere. You want to go into the bank? You just shoot the door.
For real, right? They're like, they were like, oh man, we gotta hire a Slicer. If you give me that money, I'll do it for you.
Get over here, Freck. All right, so they meet Tala. They go to the town in Mapuzo. She's explaining like what the way is, or the path. I think they call it different things, but it's like an underground railroad.
Yeah, I think it was called the path.
So they show you like where it is, and I actually thought that whole scenario was cool. Like that there's like this underground system that all leads to Jabim, and that's like the meeting place of all these different underground railroad locations to eventually find like new passage for force sensitive people or people just on the run from the Empire. So
it was cool that
it's kind of like
it was cool that we had somebody that wrote something at that place that he was at, somebody that we know well, Quinlan Voss.
Quinlan Voss, yeah. Did you ever read the book
Dark Disciple? Yeah, that was good.
That's a good one. That's a really good book, and I think that's the only that is the only canon novel where it's like a big Quinlan Voss novel, and I highly recommend it. I'd love to do a show on that eventually at some point, but there's so many things to do shows about. Highly recommend Dark Disciple, especially if you're an Asajj Ventures fan.
Yeah, I feel like audiobooks, those like Star Wars audiobooks even the smaller production ones are really good, but the ones that are like they're like a production, it's like listening to an episode or a movie of Star Wars essentially.
It's true, yeah. No, they do a really good job with the production value. They add sound effects, they add music, they give like ambience in the background, and everything seems and fits really well. And lately they've been knocking it out of the park. I think ever since like Light of the Jedi, their production quality has like bumped a little bit higher.
Oh really? That's crazy, because there was a lot before that I thought were amazing.
Oh yeah, no, they've always been
especially Dooku, the Dooku one.
Well, Dooku Jedi Lost was an audio drama. That's like a separate thing altogether. That needs to have like production quality. But like for the regular audiobooks where it's just someone narrating what's written on the page, they also add sound effects and ambience and stuff and music and stuff like that. But lately I feel like the production quality has just been getting better and better every book, and no difference with Shadow of the Sith, another great audiobook, so definitely check that out on Audible. But yeah, where were we? We just got sidetracked. But anyway, let's go into the path. Yeah, so there's that little I really loved that little nod to Quinlan Voss. It's good to know that he is, or at least was, around long enough to write that. We don't know if he's alive still, but this is the latest that we've heard of Quinlan Voss being alive at this point in the saga.
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess because Obi-Wan hadn't had contact with anybody for a while, so seeing that was genuinely a pleasant surprise. It's like, oh my gosh, he alive, or was.
Yeah, there was a touching moment where he saw the writing on the wall and he was taken aback. That's my old friend. the war, or from, you know, before the war even. So that was cool. And it's good to see that other Jedi have made it out alive, supposedly through the path. And we can assume that Quinlan Vos is probably still alive.
And I could see him surviving, especially with the type of Jedi that he is. He's just one of those like really resourceful ones that can kind of do what he needs to do to survive, you know?
Yeah, he's very much a scavenger type character, you know? Like, if you put him in the woods for a month, he'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he'll be fine.
You know?
He'll have a whole thing set up. He'll probably have like a base camp and just.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, he'll be good.
He'll be good. So in that episode, Reva and the Inquisitors and Vader show up on Mapuzo, and as Kenobi is trying to get Leia out safe, they end up getting separated because Obi-Wan decides to stay and draw Vader away from Leia, because his ultimate goal is to not let Vader know that Leia and or Luke are still alive, or even alive, you know? So he stays behind, and then Tala and Leia go ahead. It's interesting. There's certain scenes that show that Tala is at least partially Force sensitive, because there's a moment where Obi-Wan gets into trouble when he's fighting Vader, and she stops in the cave, and she senses that there's something wrong, and so she decides to head back. This is another one of those things where like spatial awareness is kind of weird when it comes to the path, because we don't actually know if there are other. I mean, we have to assume that there are other like divergent paths within that underground pathway, basically, because what we do know is that there's an entrance in this droid depot, and then there's another entrance where there's going to be a shuttle to get off planet. So we know that there's at least 2 entrances. But when Tala decides to go back, that's when Reva enters the path, and they never intersect. We find that Tala ends up in like whatever salt mines or whatever that Vader and Obi-Wan are at, and Reva is still in the path at some point, and she never intersects with Tala. So there has to be a like side corridor that Tala exits out of that we just don't see. But a problem with that is that we're not shown that, so it's like it's awkward, you know? It's just like a wait, what happened kind of thing. Am I making sense? Or?
No, you are. I'm just trying to think back on that episode to see if I remember. Was there any point where it actually forks off, or it just seemed like a straight line?
It just seems like a straight line. That's the problem. Like, it doesn't seem like there's any forks, but there must be at some point, because Tala and Reva never intersect. But they're bound to intersect if it's just a one-way, you know? And then there's the whole like, well, how did Reva find the other side of the path anyway before Leia gets there? But that's another story, and I guess she could figure it out, whatever. So Reva captures young Leia, and Vader throws Obi-Wan Kenobi around in the fire a little bit. What'd you think of that first fight?
Well, before he actually came across Obi-Wan, Vader he was menacing, man. He was throwing some people around, choking them out. Like, he was doing some crazy stuff to draw Obi-Wan out.
He breaks a kid's neck. Yeah, that was just savage. That was uncalled for.
Hey, it was Vader.
So
Vader did it to draw Obi-Wan out. 100%.
It definitely worked. Vader and Obi-Wan showdown, and there's a lot of like moments where it's almost like a fake out, like they're about to fight, or they fight a little bit, and then Obi-Wan runs around a pile of sand, and then Vader can't find him anymore, like those babies playing peekaboo.
Well, I mean, I don't think that Vader lost him.
No,
yeah, okay. I don't think that Vader lost him. I mean,
I'm being too critical here.
I think that, because if he truly had lost him, then Obi-Wan would have gotten away. No, he showed up. Remember?
That's true.
He popped up on him with his lightsaber.
Yeah, a couple times. So it's true.
I think that really Vader was just toying with him.
He's playing with his food. I think that this first fight was a really necessary one for Obi-Wan.
It was a wake-up call.
a wake-up call that he needs to get his act together and get the Force back, as well as just for the audience to show like that this isn't the same Jedi Knight that we're used to, you know. And it's almost like a prelude, like there's gonna be another showdown eventually in this show between Vader and Obi-Wan, and there has to be that arc of regrowth for him.
Yeah.
All right, so Obi-Wan makes it out alive, thankfully, and they put him in Bacta, and like by the episode 4, the entire point, or the entire purpose of that episode is for Obi-Wan to go into Fortress Inquisitorius, which I'm sure you spent a lot of time there in Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh man, that was such a good game. I don't know if you played it.
I played a lot of it. I haven't finished it.
You need to.
I know I do. I really do. Especially now that they're doing the second one. Yeah, so Fortress Inquisitorius, what did you think of that entire episode? Like, some people like really liked it, some people didn't like what they did with the fortress design. I think there's comparisons that you can find online where it's like the design is somewhat like less impressive than it was in the game or something like that. But
the game was designed for you to actually kind of like be in it and whatnot. The TV show, you weren't going to see it the way that you were going to see it in the game. So
right.
I'm just believing that there's parts of it that you're seeing in the game that you're obviously not seeing in the TV show. But I thought it was a good episode. I thought that we got a good hallway scene with Obi-Wan.
Okay, yeah. So we got a couple like pretty good hallway scenes with Obi-Wan in that one. But are you talking about the one with the glass holding back the
That was
water?
a good one.
That was interesting. Jen was telling me that there's another podcast she listens to called Blast Points, and it's a Star Wars podcast. So shout out to Blast Points. And they were mentioning that, like, how dumb of a design is it that, like, a standard blaster can, like, poke a hole through their a very structural part of their fortress that's, like, underwater. And it's true, like, it should, if that were real life, it would be like super tempered glass, you know, like.
Well, yeah, you would believe that it would take a lot more for you to take it down because of the pressure of the water.
Right, exactly. So, but other than that, it was a really powerful moment, because that's kind of the moment that he got his mojo back.
Yeah. So we needed that water. We needed that glass to break.
Right. Long gone are the days of the Red Hot Chili Spice. Now he's got his mojo back. You guys can't see it, but Anthony's just shaking his head on the other side of the camera. Let's keep going. So that's the episode where Reva's interrogating young Leia, and that's like, honestly, I'm so impressed by. I'm impressed by the acting, like, all around in the show, but I'm really impressed with young Leia. I don't actually know the actress's name. I'm gonna look it up really quick.
I did enjoy that she was toying with Reva,
which is very funny.
I know she's a 10-year-old and she's keeping her composure a lot better than Reva.
Yeah, and she's like toying with her with fake tears, and she's asking all the right questions, and then she's actually like interrogating Reva in a way. Like, if you rewatch it, you'll notice she's asking very specific questions that's like making Reva, you know, Reva's talking in circles like she's beating around the bush, but she's answering enough questions for her to realize that Leia plays Reva. So the actress's name is Vivian Lyra Blair. Or Lyra Blair. Yeah, she did great. I hope that they use more of her in the future as a young Leia in future titles, whatever they decide to do with the future projects.
Yeah. Maybe
Andor? Probably not, because it's a little further in the timeline. I love the scene where Obi-Wan breaks her out. You know, like the room gets dark, and the two stormtroopers are like, "Hey, what's that?" And you see the lightsaber just chop him in half.
Yeah, that was a good scene where she's in that interrogation contraption.
Right. Yeah. Lots of fun stuff in that. And there's also like some stupid stuff in it, like at the end where he has Leia underneath a coat, and they're walking past like hundreds of people at alert. You know, like everyone's looking for these two individuals, and here's this guy with a big coat and 4 legs.
And it's obviously not He's obviously not in like Imperial regs because all of them are kind of clean cut, very sharp. Their uniforms are very sharp, and he's just like kind of like loose, giant coat. Looks like there's somebody underneath.
And the
there.
Imperials, if I remember correctly, they're kind of like Nazis in the sense that they don't have beards.
Yeah, right?
Like,
dude, they're clean cut,
like super clean cut. Yeah, so he stands out tremendously. Yeah, so that's interesting. And then they get saved by those two people in the snow speeders. One of them is named Wade, and I thought it was so funny, like when they went back to their base and like the other girl's like all sad and like, where's Wade? And then nobody wonders where Wade is after that. You know, they get to the transport like station at Jabeam, and they're all like, did you get the girl? And they're like, yeah, we got the girl, but nobody asked for Wade at that point. I was like, poor Wade.
He went down, nobody asked.
The actress who plays Tala, she was also in Game of Thrones.
Yes, she was.
Gotta look her up.
She played
Indira Varma, that's her name.
Yeah, she played
yeah,
Pedro Pascal's love interest in that. Isn't it crazy? It's like they've been taking all of these Game of Thrones actors and actresses and putting them into these Star Wars shows.
They're doing good. So yeah, she actually shined quite a bit in this episode. She got them into the fortress to begin with,
right?
And was able to guide them through it, even though like it was at great personal loss to her, in the sense that like, you know, she's giving up the fact that she's a double agent. She has been for like a couple years at this point. I really appreciated her ingenuity in the moment, like bringing Reva away from the interrogation room, so that she can basically like lie to her face.
I know.
Yeah, I love the interaction between Reva and Tala in that episode.
I know, she stood her ground too.
Mm-hmm. Let's jump into episode 5. We have Vader and friends who now know that they're at Jabeam because Reva put a tracker into Lola.
No, she just set Lola into evil mode.
Well, yeah, but no, there was a tracker in Lola.
No, I know. She set Lola in evil mode and she started tracking.
Yes, yeah, there you go. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
They find their location on Jabeam, and it becomes like a slow barricade moment where they can't get out because the blast doors up top are locked thanks to evil Lola, and you know, they're outside just trying to like blast their way in. The whole episode is like a big back and forth siege tactic sort of thing. When the Empire thinks that they've made a step forward, they've actually made like 2 steps back, and so on and so forth. What'd you think of that episode? Because we actually got a really good fight. We got some great Vader action in that episode.
Yeah, we really did get some good Vader action. The vibe of it kind of reminded me a little bit of The Last Jedi, where they're kind of holding off in that bunker area against that was the First Order, this is the Empire. And so this one was really action packed. We got some really good fighting. We lost Tala in this one.
Yes, yeah, we did.
She went out to protect everybody, and this is where we get Reva's backstory. This is where Obi-Wan realizes that she's hunting Vader.
Yeah, this is also an episode where we get some flashbacks to pre-Clone Wars Master and Apprentice stuff with Obi-Wan and Anakin. Why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing because how old they looked.
Yes. Yeah, no, that was probably a scene where they could have done a little more like makeup or a little more de-aging action. They needed to do a little bit of de-aging.
They really needed to, because like
it worked for Ewan, but it didn't work at all for Hayden. Like he's grown far too much in the years since he filmed last.
Right. Obi-Wan probably needed just a little bit of a touch-up in de-aging, but Anakin, he needed a bit of de-aging because he's a lot older. You could tell he's a lot older than the character that he's supposed to be playing, which is, what would you say?
He's probably at least 20 years older than the character he's supposed to be playing.
But yeah, they needed some de-aging there. That's what kind of made me laugh. I love that scene, but him looking older like messed me up.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I kind of looked past it. Like, I still love the fact that they brought Hayden on.
Oh yeah,
that's huge because I love the actor so much, and I think that he's kind of like fallen away from acting because of it has to be partially because of the negative response of the prequels at the time.
Right.
So seeing him happy and like excited to be in that role, I'm all for it. I don't even care if they don't de-age him. Bring him back as much as you can.
I think that he got a bad rap for it, and it was almost like Robert Pattinson, where although I would say Robert Pattinson got the shorter end of the stick, because in Star Wars you can dislike Star Wars. There's going to be a group of people that dislike it, but there's also going to be a huge group that likes the prequels. Like, I've always liked Hayden Christensen, and I've always liked the prequels. Do they have their problems? Yes, but it doesn't get, for me, it still feels very much so like Star Wars,
Totally.
And so
I agree.
And so I just think that he was unjustly thrown on the wayside after that whole ordeal.
So I'm happy he's back. I'm happy that they brought him back, not only to reprise that role as Anakin Skywalker, but to also be in the suit of Darth Vader. That's cool. Yeah. That's what he was hired to do in the first place, is to eventually embody Darth Vader. So that was nice. You mentioned that it had Last Jedi vibes. Is that what you said? Episode 5?
Yes. Remember, they were stuck in that bunker in The Last Jedi, and they were biding time to escape.
Right. That's actually a really good point. What I noticed, and I may just be seeing things, but I noticed that, take a look at the episode titles of everything. It's part 1, part 2, part 3, and so on. But the episode numbers are in Roman numerals. It's like part I, part II, part III, part IV, and so on. And that got me thinking, like, is there some connection between each of these episodes and their corresponding, like, saga films? And when I was rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, there is. So in the first episode, you have little stuff like Luke pretending to be on a pod racer, and he has the glasses. And then you have Leia, who in the very beginning, she has a decoy. She has that like alien girl like dress up as her, and it like freaks out her mother.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of like what happens with Padme with her decoys and her handmaidens. And then episode 2, you have a large sequence in Coruscant. You have that whole like Coruscant underground, which was very similar to what we had in Dayu. Episode 3, obviously the big connection is the fire that Anakin is roasted on in episode 3, and then Obi-Wan is roasted in part 3 like chestnuts. Episode 4 is probably the biggest connection, because that's the one where they have to break into an Imperial facility to save Princess Leia. That's like a direct correlation between the Death Star and Fortress Inquisitorius. Episode 5, I would say that the Empire Strikes Back, it reminds me of the opening to Empire Strikes Back,
on Hoth.
Where they're on Hoth, and they're in that rebel base, they're trying to escape it. So I think that's the big connection there. And then finally in the 6th part, it's the moral and the emotional connection between Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Luke and Anakin, or Luke and Vader.
Right.
And I think those juxtaposed, I don't know, I think it's intentional. I'm probably missing quite a bit. If I really break it down, there's probably a lot more connections between each episode and each part of Obi-Wan. But I don't know, there's definitely something there.
That's cool. I never thought about it that way. I had noticed the Roman numerals, but I didn't think of them in that kind of way. That's actually pretty cool. But that episode was really, really cool. We did get some crazy Vader action. With him pulling that ship, that kind of reminds me of The Force Unleashed with Starkiller, where he's like pulling the ship. And And
that was
cool that they played him though. They tricked him out. They had a feeling that he was gonna, or Obi-Wan probably thought like he's probably gonna stop one of the ships, so we need to use one as a decoy. And like, dude, like he ripped that thing. Dude, he ripped off a piece of that ship like that. Darth Vader is strong, man.
Yeah, and he was angry, and it just goes to show like how powerful he really is. Like that ship had like 5 or 6 thrusters just going full throttle, and he just like stopped it midair and like, nope, come back down. And then he ripped it like, he's ripping off a piece of toilet paper.
Dude, seriously, like he was grabbing a paper airplane out of the sky.
And then I love that like there's the other ship in the background that just like bounces off. And actually, if you go back into the episode and like watch like the the ship, there is 2 ships in that little shipyard. So it's kind of hinted at earlier in the episode. But dude, the fight between him and Reva, where he's like stopping her lightsaber and just flipping her around, and dude, I was on the edge of my seat when I saw that the first time.
It was definitely going to happen because she had this mission that she had been building up towards, and we found out what it was in this episode. So I was like, okay, is she gonna throw down with them at some point in the show? And she does.
Totally. And Vader toys with her. Like absolutely throws her around, like she has a double-bladed lightsaber swinging around and he's just dodging it, like he's just like stepping back like, haha, hoo, missed me again. It was almost like, I don't want to say Drunken Master style, but like it was so easy for him to just avoid being hit that it was like sad for Reva.
It really is, considering the fact that like most of the time Vader just seems like very clunky.
Right, yeah, this is the first real time that he's not clunky at all.
Like I don't know if he's hustling people. They're thinking that he's slow, but he is not. He's dodging. It shows why he's feared. He's not just strong in the Force. Like he can still throw down with the lightsaber. He can throw down.
Yeah, for sure. So that was great. And the episode ends with a cliffhanger that Reva finds that little communicator with Bail Organa's message saying like, has he found out about the children? If not, or if so, I'm gonna head over to Tatooine and talk to Owen or whatever, help Owen out. So that's where the episode leaves off, and the following episode we have Vader and friends chasing down that transport ship, and Obi-Wan makes the executive decision, hey, I'm gonna peace out because he wants me, he doesn't want any of you guys anyway. And he makes the right choice, because Vader does like divert all his attention to taking Obi-Wan down. And it's interesting because the Grand Inquisitor doesn't seem to realize like why he wants to take Obi-Wan down. He's just like, sir, it doesn't make any sense to take down just one Jedi when there's a whole ship of like traitors over there. It doesn't mean anything for him. No,
Vader is dead set on getting Obi-Wan. And I really like this episode, and there's a lot of callbacks, and there's a lot of emotion in this episode.
Oh, absolutely. There was parts where I was like tearing up, especially the first time watching it. It was all just like fresh and raw to me, and the fact that by the time that Vader catches up with Obi-Wan and they're throwing down, and you could tell that Obi-Wan still does not want to kill Vader. Like he still loves Anakin like a brother, and it's terrible. But like I said, Obi-Wan finally gets his mojo back. He's strong in the Force. He is able to lift up as many rocks as possible.
Right. It was really, really cool because he's doing a lot better than when he was during that first fight. But then he does get a bit beaten down, and then Obi-Wan finds like just something worth fighting for. So really, it just reignites who he was. And so he comes out, and let me tell you, man, when he did that pose, the Obi-Wan pose.
Oh man!
And then when they did the lines from Revenge of the Sith,
I will do what I must.
Yeah, but they changed it from "you will try" to "then you will die."
Yeah, there's a lot of great lines in that entire fight scene. Actually, the fight itself is choreographed well. You could tell.
Yeah.
may not be as good as like say Revenge of the Sith, but it's definitely up there, you know, in terms of like what they're doing with lightsabers. And one thing I noticed is that like if you compare the scenes, I mean, I didn't do this, but I saw others do it. If you compare the scenes in like the flashback to like when Obi-Wan and Anakin are sparring to when they're fighting in that planet, it's some of the moves that they do are like copies of their fight previously. So it's like Anakin still hasn't learned those lessons.
Right. He is so dead set on winning.
He's so dead set on winning, and Obi-Wan actually says like, until you overcome that, you'll always be an apprentice. And that line stuck out to me because I thought about it. It's true. Anakin never graduates, you know? He goes from master to master, you know? Or like he goes from apprentice to apprentice because his master is Obi-Wan when he's a Jedi, and then his master is Sidious when he's a Sith. And he never graduates and is ever called a master, you know? Like he's not included in the Jedi Council as a master. He's not. It's quite sad. I feel like, and it's true. Like he never gets to that point where he can ever be a master of anyone because he can't master himself.
That's true. Like he can even master the Inquisitors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously he was far better than them, but it was a matter of like there was no respect between them.
Exactly. And when Obi-Wan, you know, he really threw down on Vader, and he could have easily killed Vader. And the effect in this scene I really, really liked was when they were, and I love that they brought back James Earl Jones to do Vader, but I loved when his helmet was destroyed and his armor was damaged, that the voice transitioned between Hayden and James Earl Jones.
Yeah, that was pretty cool how they balanced that. Like sometimes it would be like more prominently, you know, James, and then other times it'd be more prominently Hayden. One sound effect that that's always grating to me, but it's a perfect Star Wars sound effect. When Vader's respirator is broken, you hear that.
Oh yeah.
That like gets me every time, and when I heard it in this, I'm just like, oh, poor Anakin, he just can't win, and you know he's in agony when he's like struggling to breathe like that.
Right, and there's something that somebody had brought up, which was a really cool fact, was that when he was kind of teetering in Anakin mode, you saw the blue lightsaber, but then when he went back into Vader mode, you saw the red.
Interesting. Also, if you notice, like if you look at the pupil of his eye, sometimes it's rimmed with like the red yellow Sith, and other times it's like brown, and it switches back and forth depending on like what he's saying, and it's a really fine attention to detail in my opinion. Someone brought up the fact that in his fight with Ahsoka in Rebels, his right side of his face was exposed in his mask. But when he fights Obi-Wan, it's his left side of his face. But it isn't until he faces off against Luke that his whole mask is taken off. And that's when Anakin really returns. And it's just so poetic. I love all the symmetry between, you know, Star Wars in general. Like, but especially Anakin's story is so well done.
And it was so, in that scene when Obi-Wan's, like, his heart is breaking, like, kind of all over again. When Vader was like, you didn't kill Anakin. You know, you didn't fail me.
Right.
You know, it was Vader. I killed Anakin.
I wonder if that was... It's interesting. That line is interesting because I wonder if Anakin is actually letting Obi-Wan off the hook in that instance. You know, like, he can see the pain in Obi-Wan's face, obviously. Do you think that he was just saying, like, do you think he was kind of like letting Obi-Wan off the hook a little bit, or was he trying to say something else? I don't know.
I think so. I think that the thing with Darth Vader is that he can be so ruthless, but when it comes to these people that he has an emotional tie to, he's just so conflicted. Like, he cannot fully commit to killing Obi-Wan, just as the same as that he couldn't fully commit to killing Luke.
Yeah, and actually you see at the end Palpatine, you know, approaches him like over, you know, the hollow, and he's like, I feel like you're conflicted with feelings for your previous master, and that may have been that. Yeah.
You know, when it comes to just people in general, you know, you could have a resentment towards somebody, but the good feelings that you might have established with them don't go away all the time. You become conflicted, and actually the resentment hurts even more because you've had that emotional tie towards somebody. So I think that that's what it is with Vader and Obi-Wan. It's just, and Obi-Wan the same. Obi-Wan could not kill him.
Yeah. No, it's a fascinating dilemma in that episode, and actually it leads into a couple things where you know, for the longest time Star Wars fans have been like, well, why did Obi-Wan lie about how how Luke's father died? You know, he says that Darth Vader killed his father. That line specifically answers that, you know, the fact that you didn't kill Anakin, I did. Vader killed Anakin. So he wasn't lying at that point. And also the fact that after he says, well, my friend is truly dead, and then he starts calling him Darth, like Alec Guinness did.
Right. Or it definitely ties a lot to the original trilogy, and it caps off a lot of stuff that needed to be capped off between the prequels and the original.
You know what scene I loved? But, well, two scenes. It's the two final scenes where, there's three scenes, but specifically the scene with Obi-Wan, like, going to Alderaan and talking to Leia about, like, you know, you get this from your mother and you get this from your father. Dude, that choked me up so much.
Because he was right.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'd never even thought about that.
Oh, yeah, and we hadn't even talked about the fact that Reva came to Tatooine.
So she had a moral dilemma where she wanted to take away Anakin's son, like he did to the younglings, and it, you know, backfired because she couldn't do it. She couldn't be like him, which it was a huge character moment, and ultimately was a pretty redeeming moment for her. Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, you know, held the fort down. They were kicking butt for a little bit.
I know, right? Why couldn't they take out the stormtroopers that came through, you know? Maybe they're just too old.
At that point, yeah.
And Obi-Wan kind of tells her, you know, that by her doing what she did, she didn't become him, you know?
Yeah. So what else? We have his official meeting of Luke Skywalker, which was nice, you know, like I love the fact that Owen kind of like gave in and was just like, hey, you want to meet the kid? Yeah. And it was just a nice, like, hello there, you know, kind of in like the Alec Guinness voice. So that was nice.
Which is actually cool that they did that, because that's how he's introduced in A New Hope.
Yeah, no, it's like, true. It's
hello there. and it was a callback to, everybody wanted him to say it. Let's be real.
Yeah, no,
they wanted him to do the pose, and they wanted him to do the hello there, and they gave it to us.
Yes, so those two things, especially the hello there, is like his biggest prequel meme. So it's good to have that in there. But we can't end this without talking about finally seeing Qui-Gon at the end.
I love Liam Neeson. Like I loved his character as Qui-Gon, and it was great to see him as Qui-Gon again.
So this was billed as a limited series. Do you think there's room for more?
I think that they're starting to peel that away. I don't think it's called a limited series anymore. And I think they called it a season finale, not a series finale.
Fascinating. Okay. All right. So hopefully we might get a little bit more in the future.
Right. And there's there's whisperings and rumors of a second season, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. If we don't get it, I'm happy. You know, not that I'm happy that we don't get it. I'm just saying I'm happy with what we got.
Exactly. I think that it did a great job with what we had gotten. Would I complain for more? No, I would love to see more, but it would need to be done right, and we would need a reason for it to exist, you know?
Absolutely. All right, so let's wrap this up because we've been at this for over 10 minutes, or for over 2 hours now. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here at Project Geekology for our 47th episode. We're getting close to 50 episodes, but we still love listening and listening to, you know, your reviews of our podcast. So please go to wherever you listen to your podcasts and give us a review, nice 5-star review. Tell us what you like, what you dislike, what you want to see more of or hear more of rather. And we'd love to interact with you a little bit in that sense. But you can also visit us on social media at pgeekology on Twitter and Project Geekology on Instagram.
Yes. So, give us a 5-star review for more 5-star content, as always.
Yeah, it's always 5-star content from us. That's the rule.
And it's always a pleasure to see your input. We love reading comments, and we love reading interactions from you all, because sometimes you guys have insight that we might have not have thought of. And so continuing that conversation really does well for what we're trying to do here, which is talk about things that we like and to create a conversation around it.
Yeah, ultimately that's what it is. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.